Indigenous Rights Radio, because knowledge is power.
Every year on the 2nd of January, many South Africans celebrate the second New Year's Day as a symbol of the history of the hardships endured by enslaved people brought to South Africa, and also the hardships endured by indigenous South Africans of Khoi and San descent. Slavery at the Cape of Good Hope, introduced by the Dutch East India Company in the mid-1600s, became a central part of the colony's economy and society. Enslaved people were brought mainly from East Africa, Madagascar, India, and Southeast Asia to work on farms, in households, and at the company's outposts. Their labor helped sustain the growing settler population, but it came at the cost of harsh conditions, limited freedoms, and the loss of cultural and family ties. Over time, enslaved communities at the Cape shaped the region's cultural and linguistic heritage, despite the oppression they faced, until slavery was formally abolished in 1834. In Paarl, a town in the Western Cape, slavery played a significant role in shaping early agricultural and social life. Enslaved people worked mainly on vineyards, wheat farms, and in households owned by Dutch settler families. Their labor was essential to developing Paarl's wine and farming industries, even as they endured harsh conditions, strict control, and limited rights. Despite this, enslaved communities maintained aspects of their cultural identities and contributed to the linguistic and cultural foundations of the region. Slavery in Paarl officially ended in 1834, but its legacy remains an important part of the town's history. We traveled to Paarl in the Western Cape, South Africa, and visited an old church that was built specifically for slaves, and we heard from historian Hybré van Niekerk.
Thank you so much, Sheldon, for having me.
Let's just start with a brief introduction. Who is Hybré van Niekerk? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my word, that's something that I must think about. Who is Hybré van Niekerk? No, I'm a self-taught historian. I love history. I became a tourist guide in 2012, 2013. At that time, I was working here at Hardships Museum as curator. And I was actually offered the opportunity through the lotto. You know, if you play lottery, like the lotto, so the funds that's been generated on the lotto side, they use it to set out programs. And I was fortunate to become a tourist guide through funding of the lotto. Since my passion is history, and ever since I was in primary school, the local history specifically fascinated me so much. And if I never took history as a subject when I was in high school, but names like Jan van Riebeeck, Arnoldus Pannevis, Abraham Gabema, and then Shaka Zulu, and all of, that the South African history, that was names that got stuck in my head. And in 2005, I was fortunate to become information officer for Paarl Tourism Association. And the thing is, when you are in an information office, you sell your town to the visitors, and history is a huge part of that as well. And we've also assisted primary school learners when they came in for assignments and they wanted more information. So I got to that extent where I had like a folder with all of the different historical sites in Paarl and stories about how Paarl came into existence, and right from the beginning up until, say, the implementation of the Group Areas Act. And when I became a tourist guide, I decided not to do the wine tours as such, because you earn more income out of the wine tours, but I went for that quality tours, and I decided to focus on history. So yeah, and today I'm a historical guide, culture guide, and I'm also a family researcher when I started to work here at Het Gestig specifically, I compiled the family tree of the first slave that was baptized in the church. So that's where that bug bit me, and ever since then, that's why I say I'm a self-taught historian, family researcher, and a culture guide.
Hybré van Niekerk told us about this old church called Hardships, which is now a museum.
Yeah, it's very special to do this interview in this church building. Hardships was erected in 1813, especially for the slaves to have a separate place where they could have religious instruction in a more simpler form of Dutch that would be easier for the slaves to understand. Now you can imagine 1813, okay? We all know where everything started from 1652. And at that time, in 1813, the slaves attended services with their owners at the Strooidak Church, which is further down the road here in Paarl. And the reason that was given was that the High Dutch that was spoken in the church during church services was too difficult for the slaves to understand. And I beg to differ when it comes to that part, because right from the beginning, when that whole interaction took place, when Jan van Riebeeck arrived, and Ochumau, that was here, Harry, the strandloper, and even when you hear of Kratoa, the role that they played as translators, already that interaction started to take place and people started to communicate with one another. So imagine from 1650s up until 1813, I mean, we understood one another. Although High Dutch the Bible was written in High Dutch, but the communication that took place, people understood one another because you had your slave owner and you had your slave. And that communication, they had to understand one another. So Hardships was erected for that purposes, just to give the slaves a separate place for religious instruction. And it's considered today to be the fourth oldest church building in South Africa. Hardships, the word, it's like an institution, die inrichting, but it can also be was established. Hardships, already established. They couldn't call the church a church, because years ago, it's like 3 days that you had to travel from the one town to the other town in order for that building to be known as a church. And I mean, this is like a stone throw away from where the Strooidak Church is also situated here in Paarl, in the main road. So it was called a religious institution, a oefeningshuis in Afrikaans. But yeah, just to give the slaves a separate place for religious instruction.
Hybré told us about the activity in Paarl, which is about 50 or 60 kilometers away from the metropolis of Cape Town.
So, like I've mentioned, 1652, when Jan van Riebeeck arrived, 1657, he requested or he asked permission for the Dutch East India Company to send slaves to the Cape, because it was a small community with the colonists that were here, the settlers, and they had to get help from somewhere. All the hard work and all the intense labor that had to be done here, they couldn't do on their own, and he asked for help. But in 1658, you all know the story, or you have heard the story, that the first ship of slaves to arrive actually came from Angola in 1658. And from 1687, when Paarl became a European settlement, where the free burghers received properties here in Paarl, farms. From that time, that's where I feel when the Europeans settled here, the slaves were also brought here. And the slaves came from all over, but mostly the slaves was from East Africa, Mozambique, Madagascar, South and Southeast Asia, Indonesia, India and Sri Lanka, and then occasionally it was West Africa. But the slaves came to work on the farms, and today still here in Paarl, I'm actually proud to say that I am a descendant from slave and from Khoi descent. And that's how everything came into existence when the slaves started to work here on the farms that was handed out to the free burghers. I know that the skilled artisans, slaves from India specifically, they were the skilled artisans, and a lot of the work that's been done, especially to the buildings, that was done by the slaves who had that skill. And then also, like the women from Malaysia, for instance, they were the cooks in the household, and that's how we came to know the Cape Malay cooking and the Cape Malay cuisine. And then, which is actually very sad from my side, is to think that the slaves that came from Mozambique, the guys that was like broad-built and the strong guys, they were used to do the hardest labor. And those slaves also cost more because they did harder work than the other slaves. And sad enough, there are a lot of places here in Paarl that you can still see where there's like slave quarters with doors with this big locks on, where slaves were locked up at night. And the slaves that actually had the possibility to run away, those were the slaves that were treated most badly. And I can only imagine that it was the slaves from Mozambique and from Angola, because they were the slaves that the risk was very high for them to run away, because they were not treated the same way as the other slaves, the ones that worked within the household, the ones that were the coachmen. So there was also that, there was not separation, but some form of, I won't say discrimination, but some were treated better than the other slaves. And the Khoi and the San in the area, in the beginning, they were also, I think when it was only the Khoi and San that was here, there had to be attempts to get them in to go, I want to enslave you to come and help with the hard labor. But I believe that the Dutch East India Company, and especially Van Riebeeck, he quickly realized the importance of the indigenous people, because that they were the herders and they had livestock, and they knew the value of that relationship between them to not to enslave the Khoi at that time.
The 2nd of January is a huge day in Cape Town, where minstrels dress up in colorful costumes to come out and celebrate their freedom. This celebration has been going on for hundreds of years. People with a rich and painful history often find ways to commemorate the hardships that their ancestors had to endure. Hybré told us about how the history of Paarl is remembered.
I think we've got 2 dates that stand out, and that will be the 24th of September, when we celebrate our heritage, it's Heritage Day, and then the 1st of December, when it was the emancipation of the slaves, that we also commemorate. And specifically, when I was appointed here at Het Gesticht in 2011, we started with that tradition in this church to have something like on the 1st of December to commemorate, to remember our ancestors and what they went through. Because if it wasn't for them, we would not have been here. So we are because of them. And it was the first time that I did this. It was so special because we had all the traditional food, and we had like ginger beer and everything, and Koos sisters and cook sisters, and just to get the people, especially descendants of the first congregation members who were baptized in this building, getting them back in this building to be part of this whole celebration, because it's something to celebrate. And locally, I feel that museums should go that extra mile to do more celebrations like that, because now we've got descendants of the slaves, we've got descendants of the Khoi and the San, mixed, we are all mixed. And the youth of today, they are not so closely knitted as to the relationship that I had with my grandmother. So the relationship I had with my grandmother, she told me a lot of stories. Today we don't do that with our children anymore. And so I have that special little thing here inside of me, wanting to tell my children, everything that I know of where we came from. But we don't do it today anymore. So to do more cultural events where we also include the youth, telling them the importance of their heritage, about their history. So here in Paarl, we have on the 1st of December, we have Slave Day, the emancipation of the slave, the abolishment of slavery, we celebrate that. We have the minstrels, we've got a minstrel group here in Wellington as well. And I mean, that is how you usually commemorate, do events and get the youth on board. I feel today the youth, they are the adults of tomorrow. And if you educate them well enough and teach them how to be proud of their heritage, I think then we have a winning combination.
For families of mixed heritage, slave heritage, or indigenous heritage, under the cruel apartheid regime, we were discouraged to speak our languages, practice our religions, and celebrate our cultures, since the system of apartheid based everything on color. The more refined we acted, the better our chances for employment and for a better life were. I asked Hybré if this has changed since the advent of democracy.
In the Paarl area, you can definitely see that there was like there was a change that took place. Especially now, we are more conscious about our Khoisan heritage. That you can see for a fact now. That's happening. For a child, specifically a teenager, you are being teased of how you look, your physical appearance. And if we can change that narrative where you can teach this child, speak to your grandmother, speak to your mother, ask them how they grew up. I mean, it's not nice to hear the story. It leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, how people were treated. And that one person that decided, okay, but now we're going to classify you according to how you look. And I think that's where everything shifted, because now you had people of color, where you've got a brother and two brothers, for instance. The one passed the pencil test, the other one didn't. And one grew up as white, the other one grew up as mixed or colored. So a divide also came within the families as well. And you have people that's proud of who they are, but you still get those here in Paarl that will say to me straight up, no, I'm not a descendant of the slaves. But the thing is, it's not like you've got only one country of origin where the slaves came from. There were a lot of different countries, and a lot of people looked different. The first ship to arrive here was slave from Angola. People think, okay, slaves is now people from the East. They've got a certain look, Cape Malay, Muslim heritage, you know what I'm saying? But if you don't know your history and you don't realize the countries of origin where all of them came from, how can you say that you are not related?
Just for our international audience, just describe what the pencil test is that you're talking about.
Oh, yes, so the pencil test. There's a movie called Skin. Don't know if you've seen that movie.
I have.
I will never forget that movie. But according to how you looked, if you didn't look a certain way, you were classified as not being European, not being white. Pencil test was where today I won't pass the pencil test if I just washed my hair and I leave my hair to be naturally curly and dry it, just leave it wet and dry it on its own. Put the pencil in, ask you to shake your head. If the pencil falls out, you're fine. You're classified as you've got your straight hair. But if if it stood stuck in there, then you were classified as not white. And then even they had this measuring thing tool where the nose was also measured. Huh? A lady, if you turn to the side, they would see your buttocks and the shape. So if it was like a bit, if it was more voluptuous on the backside, then also you couldn't have been European. So it was a way that we were placed in a box. We were placed there. You don't look this way. So you are not like us. And that's where that whole divide came. Today we still have the challenges with children, like I say, but if you can teach the children to be proud of who they are, I think we'll have a winning combination, a win-win situation, and children will be more proud of their heritage.
We say thank you to Hybré van Niekerk and the community of Paarl who welcomed cultural survival when we visited the Hardships Museum. For more on the rights of Indigenous peoples, visit cs.org and follow Cultural Survival on Facebook and X.
Karibuni muone mambo ya Tanzania. Karibuni muone mambo ya Zanzibar. Zanzibar ni nchi ya amani, wote mnakaribishwa.